this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet.
Rosebud, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
Hello and welcome to the Video Lineup Podcast. This is episode number one. Numero uno. I better check my list of how we're going to start this podcast. What did I say? Introduction, let's outline the concept for the podcast. What is the concept for the podcast? Putting you on the spot, Nicholas.
We're going to look at the top 100 films as rated by AFI. I actually don't know what AFI stands for. So.
I just assumed it was American Film Institute.
Yeah, okay.
Let me Google
We'll go
it.
with that.
Yeah, it looks like it is. The American Film Institute proudly curates lists, etc., etc. So it's American Film Institute. But we are going with that. Movie number one, first cab off the rank.
So Tom is the film buff. I am not at all. I think I've seen maybe 2 or 3 of the films on the list. So this should be interesting.
Yes. Yeah. I'll take the title of film buff. Let's see if I live up to it. First movie, Citizen Kane, episode number one. One at the top of the list.
Had you seen it before?
Yeah, I had seen it before. I saw it. I did 1 year of film school that I failed, and that was definitely one that we had to watch. I feel like I've seen it half a dozen times maybe, all up, including this time.
So it drew you back.
Drew me back, but yeah, we're skipping ahead. So what's the synopsis? Shall I give it? Because I put you on the spot for what then?
I'll give it a go. Basically, it's the life of an individual that came from a poor background and was given this opportunity to, with education and wealth, to make a life for himself. And it's his journey of, trying to do good in the world. And I think he just got caught up in the mess of life and ended up causing a lot more damage.
You're very sympathetic to this Charles Foster Kane guy. He's kind of an a-hole.
Yeah, but I see that almost in all of us, if given that opportunity.
That's why we're friends, because you can see the good. I'll be the Charles Foster Kane and you can be the Leland character, perhaps. Not because I want to be the lead, but because he's the a-hole. And Leland's like a nice, maybe Bernstein. He's a better character. Yeah. But IMDb says, following the death of publishing tycoon Charles Foster Kane, reporters scramble to uncover the meaning of his final utterance, Rosebud. So if you haven't seen the movie, maybe you have heard that is the thing. We're not going to. We'll give it away eventually, I'm sure. If you haven't seen it, that is kind of the central mystery. Although if you know what it is, it's not like it. It's not like the. It's more of a plot device to justify why we go on this adventure through this guy's life. Obviously, he's dead, so these are all memories, and we see it through.
You gave it away.
Spoiler alert. Dies in the first few seconds of the movie.
Yep.
But then obviously, says Rosebud. And it's very interesting, this movie. So I'm going to go, we're doing pretty well. We're checking things off the list of how to make a podcast that at least motors on through things. We've got the details. This is 1941. This movie was made. Better double check that. Some of these movies are, 1941. It's rated G, so you can sit down with a family and watch this. It's an hour and 59 minutes, so it is a long movie. And it's shot 4:3, so you're not going to get the black bars either side.
How was it received when it was
released? I got the impression that it was sort of wah, wah. Oh, I've obviously got a sore throat. Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah.
Is that it? I don't know. I thought that it was sort of like, landed like a wet blanket or whatever an expression is that means it didn't do too well. And then it was re-released in the 50s. And that's when people sort of rediscovered it. I don't know how true.
Like re-released at the cinemas.
I believe so. Yeah. Well, their television was out in the 50s, but So this is also, if we didn't say it already, this is Orson Welles writing and directing. Obviously, that's another point of contention. I watched the movie Mank. So Herman J. Mankiewicz also wrote the movie with Orson Welles.
Yep.
Gets co-credit. And obviously there's been some contention about that. We can chat about whether Orson Welles indeed did write it. But all that aside, this guy's 24 when he makes this movie. 24 years old.
24, 25.
He'd become famous from the theatre and from the radio from the War of the Worlds. Lots of people already know this, but he did become famous from a broadcast of War of the Worlds that was perceived to be real and created a bit of a panic. How much of it really was there, or how much of it was just, drama, because it was an interesting story to talk about. But he got this deal with RKO Radio Pictures. I don't know what the KO stands for. And they gave him carte blanche. I think I said that last time we had a little chat on the podcast.
You've got to use it every episode.
I'll wing that carte blanche in there every time. And he could basically make whatever he wanted. So
Didn't he bring a lot of the actors from the theatre over to film for the first time?
Yes. So so this movie is populated with people that previously I don't think had made movies at all. They're from the Mercury Theatre. So some of them, Joseph Cotton is Jedediah Leland. So the other, not really, I mean, he's a significant character, but everyone sort of comes in and out of his life. But Joseph Cotton went on to be in Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt. And I think another one, Suspicion, maybe. I could Google these, but I like him better than I like Orson Welles, I think. But I do like Orson Welles. I
think when Citizen Kane bought the newspaper, or was given it, he was given it. Fred.
So the Inquirer, does he? Oh man, I've forgotten it. I only watched the last 24. I think he owns some shares in the Inquirer, and then he decides to take the rest of it over. But we're skipping ahead, because the next thing on my list here is Nick's thoughts. Then if we stick to the list, then we'll make a podcast that might be listenable. Because my list is perfect.
The perfect list.
But, okay, so let's get straight to the point. Did you like this movie, Nick? What did you think?
I watched it twice. The first time, to be honest, I thought it was going to be like an American war film for some reason. I knew absolutely nothing about it, and so it sort of hit me by surprise, and I didn't quite get it the first time, and then I looked into the background of how the film came about and who it was meant to be about in society at that time. And then the second time I watched it, I really enjoyed it and was able to see the artistic direction of the film and how it was the first time for filming things a particular way.
Yeah, it's immediately obvious why it's number one, I think. It's immediately obvious why they show it in film schools.
Yeah.
It's really visually really interesting. And I think that's really maybe in a day and age where you go to the cinemas and everything's photo real, even if it's, like absurd sort of worlds and creatures and things that we've never seen before. But like it's the kinetic energy of a camera moving like rapidly through scenes now that are all so expansive that they don't have to suggest whole worlds. They can just show you whole worlds, i.e. Avatar or anything from Marvel. It does make it a little like, you've been on an acid trip and then you come into this movie where he does, I think, a fantastic job of showing these huge, expansive spaces and creating a real sense of place in every single place. So there's a scene in Bernstein's office, which I think is my favorite location. There's a couple of locations.
Who's Bernstein?
Bernstein is the he's got the two lackey types. He's got Jedediah Leland, and Bernstein's is kind of like the guy who's a bit more bumbling, but when the reporter goes to visit him. That office has got the rain hitting the window on the outside. It's got the fire burning behind. It's got the Charles Foster Kane's portrait up there, and
it's big.
Yeah, it's huge,
towering over him.
You really get a sense that this is an office in a building. You get the sense of what the weather is outside. Every single thing, even the opening shot, where you've got this Xanadu, which is a stand-in for William Randolph Hearst Castle.
Yeah.
Everything is so brilliantly done and so well laid out that in 3 shots, you can get an entire sense of what there's some in one shot. You get a sense. The main plot device or motivator for the movie where you have this reporter who I can't ever remember his name, but he's a reporter who you hardly ever see his face. He's a nobody. He's a placeholder for us.
Jerry Thompson.
Is that the actor or the character?
The character.
The character's Jerry Thompson, and we hardly ever see his face.
Well, that was intentional. I think all the reporters, whenever you see them together, they almost want to make them look like a mob. Yeah. Yeah, it's so clever. Everything's well thought out. And so we mentioned like Orson Welles shares his title card with Greg Toland, cinematographer or director of photography, however they credit him there. What's his background? Do you know? I don't know. Pause. I'll Google it. No, he must have been he come to Orson Welles in some way, shape or form through the studio system. But I think that they really, I read that they, and we will credit in the description below the few YouTube videos that we've watched that have had a few interesting things to say about how the movie was made, or they've gathered some things about how it was made and some of the background and things. But I heard that like Orson Welles really, because coming from the theatre and never having made a movie before, just thought about what he wanted to show, didn't think about what was possible. So you get a lot of things in this movie that weren't normal for the time. I think, a lot of things were shot in a master. So for instance, I think John Ford, is it John Ford? Or I'm pretty sure it's John Ford, the director who did Stagecoach. I think that's the film, was Stagecoach, that he never shot a master shot, which is we're going to see a lot of them in things like Casablanca, where it's the whole scene played out in one wide shot, and the camera might move on a dolly a little bit, might move in and it might move out, but mostly not much movement. Okay. And there's not any real master shots in these. There's just the shots that he wants to show. Yeah. I'm rambling a little bit, but he didn't think in terms of the normal visual language of the time of Hollywood and these big, heavy cameras. Yeah. He thought about, what do I want to show? And that's what Greg Toland and him sort of, it seems like, as you shared his title card, which is pretty rare with him, that they really meshed and were excited by that opportunity. Well, I was watching a video where they were talking about the lengths they went to get some shots. Like there are several shots where it's from the floor looking up, and they actually had a hole in the ground shooting up so that they could get it. And other times they'd have props that were in a scene that could come apart, so the camera could either move through it or pull back, and then like it comes together. Like I think the sign when they go to see Susan Alexander. And there's one scene when Citizen Kane's Foster Kane, Charles Foster Kane, Charles, his parents are adopting him out. Yeah, like that's one whole scene, and it's sort of panning back, and then it ends up moving outside. Yeah, something. So there's a table that comes together, and all that. So he does really clever transitions too, to sort of like in movies like 1917 and things that we've sort of spoiled because there's cuts that are right in front of us and they mesh them together with CGI and you wouldn't even know. Before that, you'd have to pass behind a pole and use the line of the pole to mask out the cut. But we are spoiled now. Yeah. And back then, these people hadn't had exposure to CGI and all these different things. And so they'd be watching a movie and you got them, like you say, with the props coming apart, the camera moves over the top of the building through the signage, which must have been, I can't assume what it was definitely like, but I can assume that's all it can do really. Yeah. And then you go into the top of the glass thing and it just sort of fades and you high up and he gives every single, even though the entire scene is just her sitting at a table, he gives it a real moment and you go into that twice. Yeah. And then when you leave her finally for the last time, you come back out in that grand way. He finds a way to make what really, I think if it was shot with less passion and curiosity about
how can I show this? What does each thing mean? If it was shot by someone who's just reeling off the next studio picture, it would be completely forgettable.
Yeah.
Never mind the history behind, who Charles Foster Kane really sort of represents or, debatable who they all are. Should we go into that? Some of the lore?
Did you look into it much?
Well, so I personally, I'm not like a major fanboy of this movie. I've seen it a few times. I'm sure there's plenty of people who've seen it 1,000 times more than me and know heaps more about it. But I was immediately taken by who is the guy where the drama all centered around, who's this William Randolph Hearst. And I've got the bio here, actually, the book, The Chief, which I ordered. And you can find, we'll put a link in the description below. Every purchase you make goes towards. This is a big, thick book, so I haven't even finished this book.
What's the discount?
The discount we'll give you a discount code, Video Lineup Podcasts 1932674. And so this guy, William Randolph Hearst, his life is directly mirrored. His father found a silver mine, lucked upon. I mean, he was working his ass off, but lucked upon this silver mine that made the family extremely wealthy. Then died and left all this money to his mother, Phoebe, and then this William Randolph Hearst had a small amount of money, and he basically just kept borrowing money off his mum to buy papers and newspapers, and they did lose money the same way the Inquirer loses $1 million a year. He was often up against. He was a purveyor of what they called yellow journalism. I think they do it in that. He was often up against Joseph Pulitzer in New York City. Yep. He had papers in San Francisco. He had papers eventually, just papers everywhere, radio stations, exceedingly wealthy, and built this epic castle called Hearst Castle, which is on the California coast, about halfway between.
Yeah, I looked that up.
Yeah.
Google, it's pretty impressive.
So in 2012, I went there.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we went there and we stayed in this small town. So it's in San Simeon, but there's a small town nearby. That I've forgotten the name of, but it's a cool town, and we went there. I think we went 2 days in a row.
Yep.
You do tours and stuff, and it's amazing. It's not exactly like this movie, but there are scenes in the movie like where you'll see when Susan leaves, and they're in that room, and then you can see the ceiling, and it's got all these icons painted on it, all these little logos.
Yeah.
They've got his building is filled with ceilings that were taken out of monasteries in Spain and transported the same way you see all of the things transported here. It's so clear that Citizen Kane is a direct correlation to William Randolph Hearst. Yeah. Possibly with, to Orson Welles does say that it was, to him it was several different characters, but
for legal reasons.
Yeah, but the film Mank makes it clear, and not that it's a documentary, but that it seems that for Herman J. Mankiewicz it was possibly a little bit more personal. But I'm rambling a little bit. It's very fascinating.
That is part of the reason why the film potentially didn't do so well. He wouldn't touch the film.
Yes.
Wouldn't promote it.
I think when it got nominated at the Oscars or when it was read out, people booed.
Were they a rent-a-boo crowd?
Possibly rent-a-boo. It's a shame that rent-a-boo went out of business.
Yeah, that was their one job.
Yeah, they weren't necessarily needed when Twitter and all that came out, and it's all the trolls came out, and then once they get in someone's head, it's just perpetual booing. You boo on yourself.
Yep.
I'm booing on myself right now. So what are we thinking? There's so much to talk about in this film. Can I just say something else I did in terms of camera work? And as a casual viewer of this movie, it's not. I don't think unless you sit down and go, I'm going to watch an old movie.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a movie I'd intentionally watch. I don't think.
I think we kind of the style of acting is. It's pre-Marlon Brando, so it's very it's theatre actors, and you can sort of sometimes I watched it and I felt like I can see the type of like people talk over the top of each other a little bit. It's very like that. So it is a bit. There's a cultural disconnect between us and how they were.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you decided you were going to watch this movie, you'd really have to go, you know what, this might be a little bit of a slog unless I love looking at things that are visually different.
Yeah. But that draws you in. I don't know if it was the story itself that had me enthralled, or was that combination of the way it was filmed with the story that I could look past, the old acting.
Yeah. There's do you think you got sucked into the story? You got more curious. Hey, I'm watching the number one film of all time. And, this is cool. This is more interesting than I expected it to be. I think people will be surprised. If you are completely clueless about movie history, and you're willing to give it a crack, I think you'll be surprised. This is a really interesting, compelling movie.
I feel like with art, the art that you have to actually work a little bit yourself to enjoy tends to be the better art. Like, I'm a musician, and a lot of my favourite albums I didn't like the first time I listened to it, but you keep listening to it and then you find the interesting bits in there and it starts to make sense what the musicians were trying to do.
Yeah.
And I assume film's quite similar. Something you sit down and you just love or you really enjoy the first time, you're like, it's like Candy or something. Candy or...
That's a good... I mean, I don't want to bash on any movies, but there really are a lot of crap movies that come out and you go, why didn't I watch that? I had a good time with it. It was a Netflix movie, and you don't remember when you watched it. Yeah. You don't. You just. I think all those movies where you put them on and you go, "Have I seen this? I feel like I've seen this." And it's like 45 minutes, and you go, "I've definitely seen this." Yeah. you know that there's something there that's like a miss.
Yeah.
It's good. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And I love rewatching movies like that sometimes. But this is a movie where you won't forget that you saw this movie. It'll immediately make an impression upon you. I'm going to give this a solid 5 stars review. We're going to come up with something a little bit more personal. Boo. Boo. What do you think? I mean...
I find it difficult because what are you rating it against? I guess you've got to choose your favourite movie of all time.
Okay, so let's. This is, please forgive us. This is our very first official working through a movie podcast. Yeah, we have an unaired pilot that several podcast companies passed on. It's a shame. That's not true. Yeah. We haven't shopped it around because we decided we wanted to have 100% ownership of this gold. But we'll work out. So let's have a little think. Who are some people that we'll rate it how good it could be for maybe our wives. Tessa likes zombie movies. Haley is probably
she actually watched it with me, so
Haley watched most of it.
Enjoyed it. Like Tess and I like similar films, so I think we can appreciate it.
I think that Haley would give it a 3. Do you reckon a 3 out of 5 for Tessa as well?
I think so.
Yeah, it's good for them. I
think those that are willing to labour will enjoy it. Like, do a bit of digging before you watch it to get a bit of background of how it was filmed and why it was significant for the film industry, and then watch it.
Your favourite movie is Avengers Endgame.
Yes.
No, I'm saying that's the I'm painting a picture. Oh. That person. What are they going to think?
It's not my favourite movie.
Yours is Infinity War.
I don't think they would watch it. I feel like anyone that likes those movies just...
If you flip and love Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that is for you, that is movies, this is a different beast.
Yeah.
This is a very different movie. So I don't think you'll enjoy this. No. Unless you're willing to go, you know what, I'm going to take a big step out of this thing. So I think it's a good drama. It's just the thing that stops me saying, this is because I think that the acting is so different. It's not bad. It's just different to what we're used to. It's before naturalism style, what they call the method or something. The thing is, came in. So you watch this movie, and then what's the next movie on our list? Is it The Godfather?
I thought it was.
Casablanca. The Godfather's number 3.
Yeah.
So Casablanca is going to be a similar style, 1942, 1 year later. So, he's looking at you, kid. They're saying lines. They're playing a character. It's a little cartoonish.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's just how it is. Whereas by the time we get to The Godfather, you have got people embodying a character. Al Pacino. It's Godfather Part 1, so it hasn't got Robert De Niro, but Al Pacino. Marlon Brando. How do I say Al Pacino before I say Marlon Brando? I was thinking Godfather Part 2, but that's the birth of the method right there. The naturalism where he brought that's the guy who shook the foundations of acting in Hollywood with On the Waterfront and Streetcar Named Desire and these movies where he.
I know them all.
Where his style of acting was something people had never seen before, and so I think that's what's maybe the thing that might, because it is more like theatre. It's more like you're watching theatre, but you're also getting a masterclass in just some amazing ways to place people in the frame, amazing shots. What was some of your favourite moments in the movie? Just really quickly. No, I'm not. That made me sound like, okay, you get 2 seconds. I finished my 45 minutes. You get 2 seconds.
I'm the person that likes to ponder, I guess, a bit more deeply on the themes of a movie. Like there's not moments where I'm like, that really stood out. It's like the overarching theme of, thinking about news agencies and going, have they always been sort of corrupt and just used to sway the public and push propaganda?
In that way, this movie is really relevant, isn't it? I mean, I watched it thinking, because there's some moments in it where you're like, oh, this is like, there's moments where you could see people using Charles Foster Kane in there. You go, oh, that's like Donald Trump, and like there's literally a shot where he's standing next to Hitler on a balcony. It's the themes like that are, they are still relevant, I think. And it's the futility of what our purpose is here on it. I saw this guy on YouTube, can't remember his name, he's like a business YouTuber or something. And he posted something about how 30 years or something, or three generations after we die, it's likely that no one will remember us at all.
Yeah.
Like we'll be gone. And it's sort of like, put that in perspective and live the life that you want to live, or pursue the things you want to pursue. A little hedonistic, a little, but the idea that the thing you're chasing right now, like money, it's like that's not going to last. This Charles Foster Kane guy just leaves a trail of meh mixed with pain.
But the movie gives the impression he set out with good intentions. Like there was a quote where he talked about, wanting to be the voice for the, I can't remember the exact quote.
Yeah, for the poor, basically the poor people.
Yeah.
It's
like, it seems like they set out with good intentions to try and do good, but there's something.
Absolutely.
And that seems to happen a lot. Like it's almost, see another quote, I can't remember. C.S. Lewis had a quote about those that are trying to do good with good intentions can do the most harm, because they almost kind of love you to death. It's kind of that concept. And I feel that that's going on a lot in our society, where people say, I'm doing this for your own good.
Yeah.
Don't think for yourself. I'm going to sort of force my opinion onto you.
Yeah.
And I think it's causing a lot of harm. So
that's, you sort of see him as like he's like a proxy. If you're viewing it through today's lens, which is, it's not made for today's lens, but it has always got something to say about today. I think you're right. It's got something to comment about, do these people who are so disconnected from our everyday reality, do they ever have any hope of leaving a positive? Is there a thing where you have this much power, you have this much influence, that it just destroys your ability to impact people in a positive way, and it just amplifies all of your flaws? You might not be a purely evil person, but You know, like you just take this, and ultimately in the end, his life is just so sad. You have that shot where he walks, and the use of mirrors in this movie is amazing. And the staging is amazing. You'll have people, and they'll be, you know, they'll move perfectly in the frame. They must have shot it 1,000 times, or maybe they're so rehearsed that they didn't. But they'd move back, and there'd be this little tiny gap between the character in the foreground and this character in the sort of mid, and then this character in the deep background who's now left out of the conversation for a second. It just fits just perfectly in that little gap.
Yeah.
And they didn't have video playback there. They didn't have any of that sort of stuff. And it's just amazing. And then you use that shot of the mirrors. Many times there'd be people in a mirror. And Charles Foster Kane has that final walk. I think it's the last time you see him alive. And, you know, in the progression of the movie, because obviously you see him on his deathbed, right, saying the word is literally his last words. And you have that mirror, those two mirrors where it's just him reflected back and forth, thousands of himself.
And alone.
Completely alone. And it's just, it is powerful theme to think about. What was it, dark? I was very, I feel sad. I feel like I want to cuddle him and say it'll be okay. I'll be your only friend. Can you pay my house off?
You do have a soft spot for him.
I guess I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the question I was going to ask before? Favorite visual. Can I just quickly touch on?
Yep.
I don't know. This would be an interesting thing to find out. There is a scene at the beginning, and he uses montage so well in this movie. There is, I mean, it sounds a bit wanky, doesn't it, to keep talking about these film school kind of terms?
It does.
But I will carry on. He uses montage beautifully because he needs to get through a man's whole life. I think in the movie Mankiewicz says in 2 hours it's impossible to tell the story of a whole man's life, but to leave the impression of one. And that's what he does with these montages and the news on the march, which is a really clever way you lead in. And in one of the montages, they talk about him being reclusive later in life, and you have this sort of helper, orderly type person pushing him around in a wheelchair around the garden. Yeah. And the camera is shaky cam.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking when I'm watching this time around, wow, did they have the concept of paparazzi with handheld? I mean, there weren't 16 mil cameras back then, were there? There weren't light enough cameras. I was under the impression those came in sort of the 60s. I don't know enough about it, but like these cameras are big. I went to the Stanley Kubrick exhibition years and years ago, and he had to get the chassis for a Volkswagen Beetle to be able to put one of these 65 mil film cameras onto a body so he could roll it in to get some of the tracking shots in 2001: A Space Odyssey. So this is 1941, and there's a 35 mil camera. These are big movie cameras with big wooden tripods.
What size are we talking? What?
I don't know specific, but then like there's a couple bags back here, but I'm trying to think like they'd be bigger than 3 office chairs stacked together or something.
And that shot was up high, wasn't it? That was sort of shooting down, and it seemed to be through the trees or something.
But was that something in the visual language of the people back then that they knew? Oh, that's someone spying on him.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I don't know enough about film history.
Definitely gave that feeling.
It really did. It gave that feeling, but it gave it to us because we've seen that before. Is that one of the first times that sort of thing was used? Because it was shaky cam. So firstly, they've got to take the camera off the thing, the tripod, and get that sort of stuff. Secondly, I mean, they would have had paparazzi, but would they have had them climbing the bushes or got the impression of what that was? I just thought that was a really interesting way to show things. I mean, a couple shots in, you've got him shooting someone coming through a door, reflecting through a snow globe. Yeah. Like with a really ultra wide angle lens, very close to the snow globe. It was very clever.
Yeah. We were chatting about earlier before
I did my ramble number 10.
And the camera, about the scene where he was running for, was it president or something?
Governor of New York, I believe it was. Which I think William Randolph Hearst actually did, and he definitely did run for some offices. Yeah. And I don't think he won.
And I think that scene, I was listening to Roger Ebert. He was saying that most of that scene was just a painting. They had the stage with the actors on the stage and a couple of people around the base of the stage, but then everyone else was just painted. And you were mentioning something about...
Yeah, they did something with flickering lights behind. They poked holes in this painting and they flicked lights through. And it's very, very clever. They're so clever how they do these things back then.
I felt it doesn't detract from it at all. Like it feels like it's because a lot of the story is told from people reflecting back on their life. So it gives you that feeling of this hazy, dreamlike image that you're peering into. And I think it really works. Like if you had the visual effects from today and tried to recreate that, I don't think it would be as effective.
Yeah, it's such a clever movie. It really is. Again, I think it comes back to is its cleverness and all those brilliant things. What people can find enough of enjoyment to give it 2 hours because of how much clever stuff they've already seen that was basically lifted from movies like this or inspired by these movies. This has to be one of the most groundbreaking movies of all time. And being in 1941, those things are so clever. Things the way that they do. There's a lot of, obviously, very famously, this movie uses deep focus. So you'll have characters way in the background that are in focus, and the people in the foreground are in focus.
Yeah,
you've got a shot with the mother, basically handballing Charles Foster Kane off to the bank manager.
I think that shot started with him outside, and then it draws all the way back inside the house, and keeps focus on him.
Keeps focus on him, and that's extremely difficult to pull off. You have to have a really high f-stop or t-stop. And then that means a lot of light on the stage. Tons.
Yeah, that was interesting. Roger Ebert was talking a lot about the lighting, and the positioning of lights was quite unusual for that time as well.
Yeah, the whole thing's just... I want to watch it again now.
Yeah.
His mum, I will just say, and I told you before this, but I want to put this on record. I Googled it. I mean, I was looking up. I love... A good habit to have is have the IMDb app on your phone. I mean, you don't have to do this. Sorry about touching the mic. I keep touching it. Can't help myself. And I mean, do you do this? I open up the IMDb app after every single movie.
I don't have it on my phone, so I can't.
I hope next week you'll enjoy me and my new whoever I hire instead of Nick. Not that Nick's getting hired.
I'm meant to be the novice.
Get your IMDb app. Yeah, okay. Stay in that code.
I'm the type of person that can watch a film and then at the end of it have no idea what the characters' names are. Like it's almost like I don't care. I'm about the themes of it in the story.
That's good.
So yeah.
The IMDb app is really good. You should get it. I mean, you don't have to get it, but the trivia in there,
I probably won't.
Yeah, that's good. You just keep it. You stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
I always get it, and I read the trivia, and then one of the things I look through the cast, and I kind of obsessively just look and what else has this person been in, and I've kind of always enjoyed doing that. And the mum is played by Agnes Moorehead, who goes on to play the mother in Bewitched. So there you go. I know that is probably only really interesting to me. What's her name is Endora in Bewitched. So for those of you who don't know what Bewitched is, it's a TV show from the 60s. That's about all.
I haven't seen it either.
Oh, it was on TV in the after school, wasn't
it? Maybe.
Yeah. Is it the one where Mike Myers says something? Here's a joke. I remember it. I'm going to get this. I'm going to find it. It's not even that funny, but I'm putting it in the podcast so that I can remember. The guy who plays Darren, that's right. Darren Stevens, Dick York, Dick Sargent, Sergeant York. Yeah. Dick York and Dick Sargent were the two actors who played Darren because they replaced Darren. And then there's a movie called Sergeant York.
That is some good info there.
Yeah, it's pretty dumb.
So a lot of the theatre actors went on into film. This wasn't their one and only film.
That's right. Sergeant York came out in 1941. Same year as Citizen Kane. There we go. Boom. That was a huge waste of time. Yes. So Joseph Cotton, he's the only one I really know too much about. But yeah, he went on to be in Shadow of a Doubt, which I don't know if that's in our top 100, but that's a great Hitchcock movie.
Yeah, okay.
Where he doesn't play a nice guy in that. He's not super. He's kind of a drunk, prep school dude. He's not a bad guy in this movie. It's just a flawed person, but he's a dark character in that movie.
Okay.
Yes.
Could be our tangent movie. at some
Our
point.
tangent movie. Yeah, we may leave our little safe nook of the AFI Top 100 every now and then. So have we had a discussion, Nick? Have we successfully navigated the discussion portion of this list? And we've done the interesting trivia. Did you know? Do you think we've done that? What do you reckon?
Interesting trivia. I think the most fascinating or interesting or maybe funny bit of trivia that I heard was in the picnic scene, because from what I gathered, this film was filmed on a pretty tight budget.
Yeah, I should have looked that up.
And wherever they could, they'd pinch bits and pieces from other sets from other films, and they grabbed some footage from King Kong, apparently. I'm not sure which King Kong, because there's quite a few. And they had that in the background of the picnic scene. So there's this appearance of these giant birds flying in the background, but they're apparently pterodactyls from King Kongs.
I'll have to check that out.
I thought that's quite interesting. They're obviously giant birds, so they don't look normal.
They're special birds.
Yeah.
They're only the rich get to hang out with, I guess.
That's right.
That's all. I guess you wouldn't have noticed that on a big screen for a couple of seconds,
No.
but they wouldn't have anticipated the advent of pause and zoom in.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess they probably would. I know that they did things like they shot the whole scene in the cinema screening room when News on the March finishes, and it's mostly all in just shadows and light, like lots of shadows, smoky haze, obviously there's some cigarettes in the room, and a lot of backlit people, so they're all silhouettes. And they're all played by the actors who populated the rest of the movie, Orson Welles, Joseph Cotton. They play the people in the room, but because you don't see their face, it doesn't really matter. Just like a class, and I did see that there was one of the things I watched said that for the first month of shooting, Orson Welles didn't want them to interfere, even though his contract said no interference. So he just started shooting, and said it was just tests when they were really already shooting the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that he could make sure, because studios and reporters wouldn't be interested in visiting the set just for tests. It's boring. Yeah. And so they shot things like, the cinema thing they did all in one day for I think about $800, equivalent to like $15 million now, because that's how much money it is. Yeah. $15K now. But things like the dinner table scene where they age, they did that all in one day, I think.
I think I saw something where they dressed them up as old people first, and then removed makeup over the day.
Yes, that must have been
so
it.
that they got younger.
The makeup deserves a mention too, because that really
was
holds
superb. I was shocked. Apparently, who was his friend? He wasn't happy with his makeup.
Joseph Cotton. Jedediah Leland.
Yeah, he's very disappointed with his.
His is probably, when he goes see him as an old man, his is probably the one that holds up the least well.
Yeah, I thought it was passable.
I think the best, honestly, Orson Welles playing an old man. You watch this movie and remind yourself, this man is 24 years old.
Well, he broke his ankle at some point during the movie, so he wanted to look like he had a hobble, but it was actually legitimate. So
he probably did it on purpose, because he was such a visionary.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to worship everything on him, but he did whatever he did or didn't do that you can't see. What you can see, he really carries this movie really well.
Yeah. There's something about coming to a particular medium of art fresh without having done it before, where you can just break the mold. Like there's no expectations. You're like, well, you don't know how it's supposed to be done. Yeah. And it's like I find with music as well, often with bands, it's their first album. They weren't part of the industry. They weren't told, oh, this is how you make an album. And they make their best piece of art. So.
That's where your themes works. It's like the limited thinking of being part of it, being plugged in. I wonder why some actors that live out of Hollywood, like Daniel Day-Lewis or whatever, that are just like, something, they're just out of the box. They're just something different.
Yeah.
If you get into the system, you eventually just look like everyone else.
It feels like you can't repeat it. It's like once someone's done it, you know, maybe you can glean from it. But when people try and replicate it, you're like, oh, yeah.
That's probably what we'll be talking about, and when we look back on these early episodes of this podcast and how we've revolutionized the podcast industry from our little chit-chats.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's next week? What's our next movie that we're up to? Do you know?
It's Casablanca.
Yeah, I said that before.
I have no idea what it's about. So
You don't know what Casablanca is about?
no.
Okay, well, we probably won't go into it now, but it's another black and white movie made during the war, set in Casablanca, Morocco. Very, very famous, great movie. Another movie I think I watched and I expected it to be boring and a slog. Like, I have to see this movie.
It's got that vibe about it.
Yeah.
I saw that. I keep bumping this. The poster for it. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm ready to be surprised.
Yeah, I think we will be. I mean, I've only seen it once.
Yeah.
But it's been an absolute pleasure doing Citizen Kane. I've really, really enjoyed it.
I'll give it 5 stars.
Oh, the movie?
4.5.
Yeah, I'm
I
gonna.
felt like I have to give.
I'm gonna go in decimal points because I feel like I need to be withholding. I'll give it 4.9.
No.
No, we'll go 5 stars. Has to be 5 stars.
Yeah.
We can't disagree with it. AFI top 100.
No, I think it's a film that you can go back to and get something different each time, or notice something each time. That's a good film. Like,
Yeah.
There's a few films that I'm happy to go watch if someone recommends it. You know, you'll just watch it again and again. But yeah, I think a lot of modern movies don't have that. So.
This one certainly does. Well, this has been fun.
Yes, well, thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Nicholas. What are we're going to do our sign off now? Are you ready to? I'll count you in and we'll start the song. 1, no. Well, yeah, this has been great. We will go watch Casablanca now, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
This has been the Video Lineup Podcast. Thanks for watching.